what do you think of the status of ESG funds and all those kinds of things? Is that something that you're comfortable talking about, or is that not something you really spend much time thinking about?
No, we used to spend a lot of time thinking about it. I'll throw out a disruptive idea here, which is our vision is that there's a post-fund world coming. So why would we pool 20 million people into a product, say one of these big passive index trackers, when you work in a different industry, maybe your partner works in a different industry, you have different environmental or social values, you have different tax situations. Clients are off the efficient frontier, and advisors and providers haven't been able to go the last mile because of this legacy technology, which was built for scalability, right? But now we have zero fee trading, fractional shares. Like, what costs are we pooling against anymore by putting everybody in a single product? And this was kind of the first problem we solved. And the original product development, OpenInvest, was to skip the fund manager and have software that buys the underlying securities in a benchmark. This is often called direct indexing, but it was dynamic. So connect it with a client interface where Andrew can say, okay, well, I work in finance, my partner's in healthcare, I care about tobacco and climate, and these are my taxable gains, so on. And that can dynamically reflect in the portfolio, and then you can have an S&P 500 or whatever index solution, index fund, but not a fund running just for you. So that's just an example. And then you could see that expanding across asset classes, integrating with Andrew's financial planning, integrating with his charitable giving, and you create a fully personalized and dynamic financial experience. I would call this the post-fund world. I think that it's coming. It's coming because the technology is possible, and this is still, it's not as competitive as some industries, but this is still a competitive industry. So competition will ultimately drive people towards better solutions. And so I think that's where we go long-term. And then for reasons we can discuss, I think this is what ultimately brings the mainstreaming of ESG and sustainable finance, just because it becomes easy. You push a button and it just runs through your assets. Like, why wouldn't you push the button? Just boom.
It makes sense. I know one of the critiquing opinions on maybe the whole thing in general is feeling like whatever you invest maybe doesn't make much of an impact. Can you speak on that idea and how much, obviously if we're talking at scale, you get enough people to do something that can, or what you would say to that critique? Great question. These have always been the classic questions, right? One was, are you getting hurt on performance? The other is, does this even have a real impact? Here's my response on the impact. Several counter arguments, right? It's a great argument, and this is not resolved. So I don't know the full answer, but here's what I'd say. One is, there's a lot of people that just want to wash their hands of the issue, and I think that that's completely acceptable moral behavior that we do in many other areas of our life. Like, why do you recycle? Right? Why do you vote? Like, all these things are completely negligible, but being a moral person, if you think you're part of the categorical imperative, so you do the right thing, right? And there's an implied scalability there. The second thing is that there's an indirect, what I found is a lot of the impact comes now through social media and the brand threat. So it's not necessarily the direct impact to the cost of capital or the price of a stock from you, say, divesting or investing. But when people start to divest and talk about it online, you see corporate relations light up, right? This becomes a concern for the brand because it's a high intention behavior. It's one thing to just go on a rant on Facebook, but to actually move your money, like we were saying before, is a high intention behavior that suggests that people are feeling very negatively about the brand. And that's something that companies often respond to, and they will change corporate policies. A third thing is, if this wasn't impactful, then why is it such a political football now? Which is an interesting question, right? And I'm not going to take a political side here, but the GOP has become a huge recent force pushing back on ESG. And it's swinging with administrations right now. They're trying to limit the ability to use ESG in retirement funds and so on. If it didn't have an impact, why would they care?
That's a good question. And the last thing is really proxy voting, which has not been unlocked yet, but has been referred to as the sleeping giant of ESG. You own these shares, you have the ability to vote in board level decision making. And especially once people can coordinate online or have campaigns. I mean, when I got started in this space 10 years ago, you never won. No NGOs and activists ever actually won these ESG shareholder resolutions. That's changed. Like, people are winning these things now. And that's part of why it's become a political issue, because that's high impact. So it's right there and it's shaping corporate policies.